Hello, Story Seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and welcome to the Tiny Bookcase. Right now, you're listening to our favourite part of the week.
Stories, discussion, and a high likelihood of gratuitous obscenities, all to sate the hunger of the Bibliomancer, Eusteris.
Our regular listeners will know how it works, but for newcomers, Ben and I have both written a story to the same shared prompt.
We're about to share those stories with each other and you for the first time, then we'll workshop them on mic. The prompt for this episode is Rainbow. So, Nico, how about you show us the dreams that you dream of?
Rainbow. Why are rainbow flags gay, Dad? I nearly spit my coffee at the question. Through force of will, I withhold a delicate brown misting from the entire kitchen. Instead, I swallow and let the bitter fermentation percolate a moment in my blood. I need the caffeine to work its spiritual magic and enlighten me. In truth, I do not know at all when rainbow started meaning LGBTQ+. I haven't read the history, nor been close enough to any pride parades to catch imagined leaflets filled with helpful illustrations of Tom Daley and RuPaul. I have a choice in this moment to Google it, or whisper to Alexa, "Hey Alexa, when did rainbows become gay?" Though knowing their system for searching, I'll soon be listening to Dio singing. So what do I do then? I could lie and make up something fun and inventive. Say that when the first gay couples came, they descended from the heavens on the Bifrost. Or something similarly insane. Of course, then I have to explain the Bifrost, and I only know the Marvel version. I'm desperate not to stymie growth, and my little one could one day be the lead in Odinology, or Norse studies, or whatever it is those experts call it. So I don't want a brain full of garbled nonsense. I imagine her, for a moment, explaining to a university professor in the gilded halls of Cambridge that it was Doctor Strange, in fact, who sent Thor and Loki to see the dying Odin. And I collapse within. But now I have become distracted from the flag and what it means, or why it means it. She looks at me so sweetly with those big brown eyes that she inherited from somewhere in my line, along my great-grandmother's side where all the eyes are brown, or hazel if we're being fancy. So, back onto the point I go. I start out strong. Well now, you see, but my mouth is going too fast for my brain. The gremlins are still shoveling in coal, and the fires of thought are not yet stoked enough for any kind of cohesion. It's very complicated. I sip some more coffee, and hope this mouthful is the one that supercharges me and revs the engines of creativity. So come on me, let's have a think about it and what it might mean. But what do flags have to mean anything? Are they symbolic in some way that I've yet to understand? Is understanding one's sexuality the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, guarded by queer leprechauns? The twinges of curiosity are errant coins, spilled as the green-clad cryptids scurry to and fro with your truth in tow. That's mental, I decide. It's unlikely that when the writing was happening and the queer community stood up for itself, someone said, "I identify with leprechauns, or at the very least they're pots of gold." And everyone said, "Hurrah, hurrah, let's do rainbows then." But again, it strikes me, why should flags mean anything? I've never met anyone from Wales with wings or who breathes fire. And why should crosses on a background change their meaning so aggressively when the colours are swapped? A red cross on a white background could only mean empire, dragon slaying, sorry to the Welsh, and perhaps along the way a spot of football. But swap the colours of the background and the cross, and suddenly it's tiny knives with too many accessories, guarding the Pope. Some of them are just logos when I think of it. And mostly it's just blocks of colour. Often the same ones, spun about or rotated 90 degrees, which when you think of it is terribly confusing. If someone put the flag on upside down, you could invade the wrong place. Just because some absent-minded sailor couldn't work out what way the knots go, now he's sailing into some poor nation with a flag that's one rotation away from being a friend you've offered passage to. I go to sip my coffee again, and there's nothing but the dregs left. That strange sandy grit at the bottom of the mug that leaves ominous trails against the white material. They slide down into a corner, and I want to rinse it out because it's a nice mug and I can't afford the stain. But I need to formulate an answer, as it isn't fair to the little one. Her eyes are so full of hope. And what if she's queer, and in her discovery of identity, finds that all foundations of her truth were built on a lie? What if I am disassociated from my darling child because in finding themselves, there's a void that cannot be filled wherein I told a fib? A harmless one in many ways, but to a therapist in 20 years, it might be gaslighting. I don't want to be a bad dad. I love my little one, wherever on that spectrum she may land. But also, I'm quite good at talking bollocks, a skill that has got me pretty far late nights in pubs. You know, things like working out which crisps would make the most effective armour plating for a tank platoon if it really came down to it. Which is mini cheddars, if you have to ask. And on the spot, I make a decision. I will buy myself some time to Google it, and then I know for next time, I can be clued in, ready for when someone else asks, or if it comes up in the pub quiz. I think on my feet, and I look again into the dirty mug, and then make my play. Daddy's got to do the washing up, sweetheart. Go and ask Mummy, she should know, and if she doesn't, Daddy will tell you later. She disappears into the house then to find her mother, her shout of, "Okay!" still echoing through our tiny home. I turn on the hot tap and gather up her plate, still caked in jam where toast once was. And as I prep to scrub, I turn my phone on low volume. Hey, Siri, why is a rainbow flag gay?
That was chuckle-inducing. I like that a lot.
I'm glad.
The sort of fractured mind of this millennial dad. It was unpleasantly relatable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it had your natural like flow and detail and just delight at telling a story in it, like deeply in it, like that. I think the first bit that made me chuckle was the helpful illustrations of Tom Daly or RuPaul. It's just those like little, almost like they're asides, and I always wonder whenever I see you do that, like that. We talk about it almost constantly, but
Yeah.
that must come from um, your love of like Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett. Like but it's like inside your writing, and it's your voice now.
I
Yeah, I love
yeah,
it.
almost certainly. I I think a big part of that is because of the way that my interest in comedy reading and writing has gone. Whenever I'm talking about something, it's like the brain's getting like a little knock on the side, and it's the joke like, can I just pop in here? So that's why they always end up as asides. It's like, here's the
Mm.
point, joke, and while we're talking about it, joke. Yeah, just that's kind of the rhythm of my writing now.
I like that description a lot. Yeah, almost like you have to write it down because it's
Yeah,
otherwise you can't get to the next bit. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But it also you've developed a style so that it does flow, like it always flows. Your writing always flows. Um, and this is a small in scope story, I think, but it's
yeah,
also wrestling with some ideas about maybe like some like worries about fatherhood and stuff like that. I know we have a mutual friend who's recently gone through a bunch of that, so
yeah,
I can only imagine that he's on your mind, um, especially with the kid now being able to speak.
yeah.
um, it's sort of, oh shit, are they going to call me on all of my Nolux?
Oh,
I've
I like Nolux.
yeah, I've bred a small spy that's going to split my whole world apart.
It's no, it is true. I think especially as I get older, where that it's really easy to not fulfill your curiosity sometimes as you get older.
Yeah,
And it means that there are a bunch of things. I remember being young, if I didn't know something, I desperately needed to know. And now, sometimes I might look it up on Wikipedia, but if it's the middle of the workday in the office or something, you go, do I need to know? Do I need to understand shipping lanes? Probably not. I'll be all right. But then another news story comes up and they say, "Oh, this shipping lane, it's all gone sideways," and you think, "Oh, blimey, I wish I did understand shipping lanes. This might be quite impactful. I have no idea." There was a geomagnetic storm happening recently, wasn't there?
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, no idea. I don't know what that means. I know what geo is. We're stood on it. I know what a magnet is. I know what a storm is.
Do you know how they work?
No one knows that, Ben.
But you captured this like I guess it's sort of a kind of position where the precarious self of this dad, his ego rests on the fact that he is seen as a figure of like a font of knowledge, like a figure
Yeah,
of authority, and so the fact that this particular person has filled their brain with like half knowledge littered with pop culture references is now a serious problem. You also went
yeah,
into like a bit of coffee addiction as well, I think, which was
yeah,
yeah, like now you hear about loads of people doing different kinds of things like that lion's mane mushroom and all the rest of it. Like, I mean, I've been out on coffee before, and it does like it's very helpful in the short term, but
yeah.
coffee can really fuck you up, like to the point where your brain doesn't really work unless you're on it. It's a drug.
I
Um, yeah,
I
wild.
did try that lion's mane mushroom
Did
coffee,
you?
by the way. I had it recently. It was minging. Tastes like mushrooms, believe it or not.
Did it really? Did it do anything?
Not that I noticed, apart from make me go, I'm not going to finish this coffee because it's not very nice. Sorry to anyone who absolutely adores it. I'm
I'd be
sure you
willing
are.
to try it at some point, see if it works. Different strokes
We'll
for
give it
different
a go.
folks and all that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think
Hmm.
there's something of this character that's definitely from me as well, which is whenever someone asks me something, I have to like defy the bit because my brain will often go, "Do you know what'd be really funny as a response here?"
Yeah.
And I have to really gauge: should I just tell them exactly the thing, or as you well know, we've been friends for a very long time. Sometimes I'm like, "Do you know what'd be really good if I just said some absolute twaddle to see if I could peddle it?"
Yes.
And
A,
it's
a particular piece of twaddle was in my best speech man for you.
it was
Best speech man? Best man speech. See, I need some fucking coffee.
it did it of that quality. It was the best speech, man. Um, but yeah, that kind of duality of, especially with things like, now we have an 18-month-old at our group functions.
Hmm.
They may start asking me questions, and I have to control myself and not be like, oh yeah, that's because if you don't, eels will get in your bed at night and eat you. Because it
I
would be
think
funny to me, but that's ruinous.
no, I think you're okay. I think you're okay to just issue funny bollocks to other people's children. I think it's that's fine.
Okay, I'm holding you to that one day when I ruin your infant.
No, it's okay. You'll be teaching them not to trust strangers. It's great.
Oh, wait, did you just declare that I will be a stranger to any children you have?
Yeah, as soon as the first one pops out, unfortunately, we're done.
It's just writing me off. Welcome to the Tiny Bookcase. I'm Ben, silence, and you're listening to my favourite part of the week.
When I tell stories to myself.
Baby crying in background.
Oh, fucking hell.
Right, that got very silly. I think we're gonna have to get back on track with you telling me a story, Ben.
Okay, story time. Rainbow. 10 months in a passenger module. That's enough time for a new life to be born. Or so I hoped. Would I be new? Would we? People can change, but they often forget to keep at it and backslide into old habits. I felt that none of us on board could afford to let that happen again. A rising level of discomforting kinship with those early colonizers from history troubled me as we journeyed. We were separated by centuries, but in truth there was little difference between their situation and mine. We had eyed the possibility of the horizon, built vessels to cut a path to the future, and taken a leap into the unknown. Their curious bravery ended with genocidal horror and avarice. I hoped ours wouldn't. I'd been half seriously experimenting with incorporating newer elements into old fashioned lenses when I saw it for the first time. Where there had been darkness between the stars, there was now light. As it turned out, after months of studying, we discovered that heavy light had been swaddling whole swathes of the universe from our sight. Even the most powerful telescopes weren't designed to look for what I'd accidentally found. The new planets were uninhabited, The analysts assured us. No radio waves, no satellites, no humanoids. Just a dozen newly discovered Goldilocks planets found, with one in immediate striking distance of our near-ruined home. That news made the late-stage capitalist nightmare we'd long been enduring stagger to a stop, as the entire race collectively took a moment to process the news. The readjustment to a new understanding of the universe woke something lusty and naive in all of us. New industries sprang up for old reasons. Excitement and trepidation were felt in equal measure across every sector. We were colonizers again, and the race was on. The big three superpowers, and other lesser nations, all wanted to stake their claim. The equatorial countries, historically unforgivably damaged by the kind of behaviour we were embarking on, rapidly became home to launch pads and foreigners, as the agencies of the world sought the fastest way off planet. I was dragged along with it like a fish behind a speedboat, the tugging hook buried impossibly deep within my brain. Prizes were stuffed into my hands, and my name started to being used as a possessive noun. Rake's Rainbow, they called it. Everyone else going was useful. We had engineers, farmers, artists, scientists. I, meanwhile, was drowning in imposter syndrome all the way through basic training. I was just the person who had found a new type of lens, a hobbyist astronomer and a mediocre physicist who had accidentally revised our understanding of prismatic light. Why should I get to go? What could I possibly add? In truth, I'd been burnt out by the time I'd changed everything for everyone else. Ground down to a nub of a person by the futility of modern life. To go from that to a surge of hope and curiosity beyond my wildest imaginings rendered me morally dizzy. Those morals came back and sat on my chest moments after we launched. I felt like I couldn't breathe as the planet's grip fought to keep us. I didn't realize something was wrong until I saw the other colonists relax as we eased into frictionless space. The weight on my chest remained. The sensation was like a vice grip on my heart and a clawing churn in my empty belly. I feared I was hurtling towards the same mistakes that accounted for the worst of my ancestors, and, lashed to the prow of that ship as its figurehead, there was nothing I could do to stop it. They resuscitated me, and over the 10 months, I found a measure of peace with my situation. It was that or end it, and be the first corpse on the new planet. I decided to cultivate a fresh perspective instead. With my lenses, I would be the one to keep an eye on where we had come from. I would keep us looking back at our mistakes from the other side of the rainbow. We all recognized the rattle in our bones as the new planet's atmosphere resisted our hull. I felt the tightness again, but found the will to breathe through it. We all cheered as we landed, and the disembarkation protocol was green-lit. 10 months of waiting transformed in a moment to hustle and bustle as the colony prepared to unfold. I knew I was to be first, and I can't honestly tell you I thought of anything beyond excitement as the elevator took me down to the base of the ship. They briefed me as they walked me through the armory by the airlock. The air was breathable, they said, but the suit should stay on until they could run further tests. A camera drone operator and 2 military personnel waited with me as the airlock processed us. I wondered if they were as thrilled as I was before the hatch slid open. It was dark. Night, I realized, when I saw silver shadows cast by the local moon on the rustling trees. Trees, I thought. New trees. The concept rushed up from my heart to my mind like a geyser of giddy thoughts. That cascade of imagination swept me away as I tried to consider all the wondrous divergent life we would experience and protect. I stepped down the ramp and felt my boots press into the wet mulch of woodland mud. The operator's camera drone buzzed around me as I looked up. The strip and spotlights on our scorched vessel polluted my eyes to the stars. Only the brightest could be seen, but even then I saw new shapes of constellations that set my soul on fire with delight. Then I saw it. A blinking light moving steadily with intent through the new firmament. My heart sank. I watched that satellite until the tops of the trees hid it from me. People. There were people here. Advanced people. I looked at the guns of the soldiers that had accompanied me as they stalked the perimeter around the ramp. They had known, I realized. The camera drone buzzed in front of me, looking to commemorate my reaction. My suit's pressure hissed out as I took my helmet off. They had to hear it from me. We have made a mistake.
That was a very cool concept, man.
You like it?
It's yeah. Do you know what it's got? It's got the same energy as when you talk about like the Mariana Trench and stuff. These bits of the sea where it's too dark to actually know what's there.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
find that space has that too is such a terrifying concept. But I really like it. It's a trope I always enjoy. The good-hearted scientist. Like this guy's fully. He's got this like immovable hope that even when he starts to think about ending it before he gets there, it just keeps like he bounces back in his own way, and it's always those characters who you're like, oh, he's so strong, he's done it, he's done the impossible, that then immediately get fucked over by the military industrial complex.
There it is. Yep.
It's every goddamn time. The on it weirdly on your main character, isn't it interesting that we both landed on a sort of imposter syndrome
Yeah. Yeah.
thing with
Yeah,
the
that is
prompt
strange.
rainbow? That's interesting that would be sparked in both of us, especially in stories that are so massively different.
Very much so. Yeah, I can only imagine that there's a degree of that. There are conversations around identity attached to the concept of a rainbow now. Like as you pointed out in
Yeah,
your
it's
story
true.
about the sort of queer identity stuff. Um, so I suspect maybe that's where it came from. If that's both, that's sort of in our brains, isn't it? That's
The,
a part of the
the
discussion.
like the rainbow zeitgeist. It's
The rainbow
yeah.
zeitgeist. Yeah, it
I will
sounds like
say
a way cooler zeitgeist. That.
there's a 3-word statement in your story that does so much heavy lifting, right? When they land on the planet, it says trees, new trees, and it's like what because you say the word trees and your brain can go right. Trees are not trees look like, and it's the new trees that all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, what would that even look like? Because you don't say anything about what shape they are. Like you don't say the leaves are purple and they're
Hmm.
low to the ground or whatever. But your brain just starts spinning out the into like the dimensions of creativity, and I think that's a really good tool for like flash fiction sci-fi is to
Yeah.
be able
Yeah.
to take the familiar and then it's kind of like whip it, so you pull it quite fast to get it gives that overwhelming sensation that the character's having, and it is because you've rooted it in the familiar, and I really liked that.
Mm.
I actually wrote it down. Like it's
Thank
so
you.
simple, but it did a lot of legwork.
Yeah, I mean the sentences that follow it are talking about how like that affects him. You sort
Yeah,
of get his a giddy, that giddy geyser of thoughts and all the rest of it. And
yeah,
this was something that I had a thought of a while back. It's probably really basic, uh, skill knowledge for a lot of people, but for me, it was this concept of finding your character's mentality, attaching your audience to that mentality, and then making sure that you bring as they change, as your character changes, that it brings the audience with it,
yeah,
um, rather than them just chaotically bouncing around inside the story, doing whatever they're going to do. It's like actually making sure that everything's sort of anchored to connecting with your audience about them,
yeah.
especially when
Not
it's in the first person.
not this is my guy. Keep up, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so I'm glad that that worked because that was what I was trying to do. So
I
that
think
solid.
it's a dangerous line to tread as well because there could be stuff that I love. I absolutely love the His Dark Materials trilogy,
Yeah, yeah, they're
Philip
good.
Pullman books, but there's a sort of semi-alien and alternative dimension planet. Do you remember with the elephants that have the big front claw and they put it through the fruit to use like a wheel, and they ride around like motorbikes, and the trees there are all described as super weird. And I think because it's quite prescriptive and the life
Mhm.
forms are so weird,
Yeah,
a lot of those parts of the book I don't really remember very well because I was sort of grappling with the concept of these. Maybe now as an adult, if I went back and read it, I'd go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. But especially as a kid, I remember thinking, "Fuck's happening?
No,
Why is?"
yeah, no, I think you're right there. Like, I was watching something recently, and it was a show that was doing a like a storyline about a writer, a science fiction writer from the 70s or 60s or something,
Yeah,
and he was really excited about his idea, gave it to some of his peers to read, and they were like, "Oh, okay." As you know, they'd finished it, and they were like, "So we have some questions, you know." And one of them was like, "But why?" Like,
yeah,
it was the same thing where it had these like really overblown descriptions of something that's very very different, like almost bizarrely different, just for the sake of being different in order to make it science fiction. And
yeah.
that isn't the point. You know, they were making, you know, the show was making the point that that isn't science fiction. That's, you know, you're just flailing at that point, aren't you? You just sort of, you know,
Yeah.
you haven't actually connected with the heart of your idea.
Because I mean, science fiction can be so simple. It could be, they picked up a fruit that looked like a banana, they peeled the outside off and ate it, and threw away the nasty inside.
mm,
That's that's enough to make your world at that little, just weird enough. But then if you went into, I think, like too much detail about the texture of it and kept comparing it to a banana, I think that's where a lot of people do fall over. So
or just disengage. Like you just sort of be like,
yeah.
okay, I guess it's a different banana. Okay then. Um, yeah, very much so. So I have a question for you, which is, which of these planets do you think is Earth?
Oh, so now I just assumed it started on Earth,
Uh huh.
which is of course what you intend. But now that you've posed it to me, you naughty boy.
Yeah. So it was originally written with, um, you know, name checking the superpowers and name checking the equatorial countries and all the rest of it. And then I just sort of thought, well, there's absolutely no reason that it has to be this way around.
Yeah,
Flip it, make it a super relate, you know, a very relatable story about, you know, it's almost like a decolonializing narrative. This, like, it's sort of talking about how, yeah, you know, this history of colonizing has been a huge problem, which it has for us.
yeah.
But it's this idea that maybe that's pervasive across sentience.
No, I like that. I like that a
Um,
lot.
the only
Although,
slight, the only slight thing, and you could say that this is like a bit like tenuous, and you don't have to read it this way. But the story opens by saying that 10 months is enough time for a new life to be born, not 9.
but that.
It is enough time.
Okay, yeah,
It is enough time for obviously 9 months and a bit. That is enough time, but like he specifically says 10, just to try and like give it like a maybe this is a different gestation cycle.
yeah. Okay, because I just assumed get up there and start banging, so you might
Yeah,
need a bit
true,
of time.
true. Yeah, that's the thing. But like I wanted to be like really, really,
Like really subtle with it. Yeah,
really, really start with it. So it's possible to read this as humans going to another planet. That's fine. And initially, that's what this story was. But I don't think it needs to be. I think it can be
actually,
disconnected
planet
from
going to
humanity.
another humans.
Yep, I think it
The
works too.
I think it's ludicrous to say that any external life force could arrive here, not see the wall of trash that we've built around our planet, and go, other
Yeah,
people have fucked this.
absolutely. But again, I guess the story there is that the sort of powers that be did know it was occupied, and that
Yeah,
just wasn't shared.
I mean, I'd love to apply this theory to a bunch of other sci-fi movies too. Something like District 9
Yeah,
really
yeah,
does that other perspective can be where a lot of the best sci-fi stories live. I think seeing humans as the terrifying, disgusting aliens that we are.
absolutely. You can cut bits off us, and we keep going.
Okay, I don't know if we've ever spoken about that. The concept of hyperactive scar tissue, which is an evolutionary trait that we have. Our stuff doesn't try to grow back; it just closes up. That's terrifying.
It is terrifying. It's also terrifying that if you get scurvy, it reopens.
Oh yeah, that's way worse. What it's saying is that orange is the dominant species.
There was a war between the lemons and the limes.
Okay, I need you to write that for next time. The
What,
next
take it
prompt is going to
really
be
seriously.
citrus.
Oh, well, I had a lot of fun with that. Two very different
Yeah,
stories, but again, some interesting crossovers.
yeah, I think so too. I think it was an interesting prompt, that one. I really enjoyed it. I struggled with it at first, but it's one of those ones where it's got so many options that it turns around and it feels like your options are actually limited. But I think that's just a matter of perspective and finding the story you want to actually write, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about how ideas come about, and I've always quite liked the fanciful idea of them being almost like lightning strikes, but
Yeah,
ones that you can actually in the same way with lightning. Like if you put a lightning pole up, you're more likely to get struck. So like if you put yourself in the position where you are writing, you are trying to go for it, then it can come.
yeah,
Um, and I've been finding more and more that as we hit these prompts and stuff, I will have, rather than in the early days when I had like lots of little ideas and maybe sort of cobbled things together or worked at it for a bit, got more. It's been more like, oh, that's the idea, and it's sort of just shooting from the hip a bit more. Um, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's been an
yeah.
interesting pattern that's been emerging for me. Um, whereas I know that for you, you wrote something else for this and then discarded it and then
Yes, I
wrote
did.
this. What was your sort of feeling around that? Do you think?
I think I I I came at it from the wrong angle. Is how I look at it. You know, I haven't written anything sort of really comedic for a while, and I thought, "Oh, I want to write a funny story. I want to, and I learned through that process that sometimes a couple of jokes and a funny voice just isn't enough to tell a story. And I think a few years ago, I probably just would have tried and written
Yeah,
something that wasn't very good, but it had that gag in it. But I think a big part of working out, you know, how to tell a story that's actually fun to listen to and fun to tell, and really importantly, fun to write, is instead of forcing yourself to write something because you think you should, allowing yourself to write the thing that's telling you it wants to be written.
yeah. You know it when you're writing it. I
Yeah,
strongly feel that, like, maybe not all the time. Like it's possible. You know, when I was editing this, it got a bit. It was a bit of a trudge at points. You know,
yeah,
um, but you will know at some point in the process whether it's when the idea first comes to you or when you realize what the ending is or whatever, or you know, like a particular character or whatever it is. It will feel like lightning just going through your hands.
yeah.
Um,
And sometimes even
and you can't stop. Like,
mid-story.
sorry, go
Yeah.
on.
Sometimes it's even mid-story, isn't it? You know, you like,
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is the idea, and then you go, oh god, I've only got 200 words, and then you click, click, click. Oh, I'm at word count. I need. Okay, I'll finish it, and then I'll figure it
Need
out
to cut
from
it back.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's there's nothing else like it. I wouldn't ever want to do anything else with my time. I think
yeah,
this concept of crafting stories and different kinds of stories and trying to get different tones with different and like exploring your own like mentality, your own preconception, like preconceived notions, but also like attacking and examining those ones that just sort of exist in our society as well. It's just there's so many ways to approach writing that it just feels a bit limitless, um, which can be quite scary. But I guess that's where voice comes in, doesn't it? Um, yeah, no, yeah, I really enjoyed writing this. You know, it's been a while since I I had an idea that I was like, I'm going to enjoy this all the way through,
yeah,
and right through to performing it. That was a lot of fun for me. So I guess just sort of reaffirming that like we are what 170 episodes in or
good
something
grief.
ridiculous.
That's
Most of
too
those,
many.
yeah, most of those bearing stories with our names on them, and it can still feel really fresh and really interesting, and it's a delight to do it. So big love.
Wouldn't change it for the world. Let's write some more.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at the Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne, and for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?